World War II saw some of the most devastating occurrences in the history of the world. Through the significant loss of life and atrocities such as the Jewish Holocaust, it may have been the greatest period of crisis in human history. But how did this come about? If we study history in order to learn from its mistakes, we must conclusively understand the causes of the world wars, and to understand how the Second World War came about, we must analyze the first. Prior to the First World War, the major European powers included the alliances of the Triple Entente and Triple Alliance. The Triple Entente included Great Britain, experiencing a naval arms race and economic rivalry with Germany, France, wanting returns of the territories of Alsace and Lorraine from Germany, and Russia, conflicting with Austria for control of the Balkans, while the Triple Alliance included Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Historian A.J.P. Taylor writes, "The alliances created an excessively rigid diplomatic framework within which relatively small detonators could produce huge explosions." Militarism began to see a drastic period of growth, all countries except Britain employing conscription, with the armies of Germany and France more than doubling between 1870 and 1914. Colonial rivalry between Germany and Britain encouraged more naval cooperation between Britain and France. The launch of the HMS Dreadnought also encouraged tensions, with drastically new military technology. Nationalism began to run rampant, with Britain's push for imperialism, France's desire for revenge against Germany, and the German desire for world power status known as Weltpolitik. It had become clear to the European nations that they existed as pure enemies, with eventual outbreak of war being greeted with cheering crowds in Vienna, Berlin, and Paris. The famous German Schäfflin Plan involved the assumption that war with France was imminent after declaring war on Russia, and included the focusing of troops to Paris through Belgium and then transferring them back to Russia. As war drew closer, all other powers maintained war plans, assuming the complete cooperation of their allies. In the Moroccan crises, Germany challenged France's influence there and built tensions with increased military activity. However, the eventual German settlement for this region was still viewed as weakness by many German citizens. Negotiative tension arose between Austria and Russia after the annexation of Bosnia, as it had a significant Serbian population. The lands of the Balkans left by the Ottoman Empire served as a subject of conflict, as Slav nationalism increased, leaving Austria threatened by this rising presence. Austria moved to wage a preventative war against Serbia, with Russia as Serbia's continuing supporter, likely to avoid complete Austrian dominance in this region. In the July crisis, Franz Ferdinand was murdered by a Serbian nationalist, prompting a presentation of demands from Austria to Serbia. It should be understood that while not the cause of the war, this had considerable significance, as Austria had been waiting for correct pretext to pressure Serbia. Perhaps to Austria's surprise, Serbia attempted complacency. Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany commented Serbia's acceptance of these demands was, quote, "a great moral victory for Vienna, but with it, every reason for war disappears." Austria rejected this response and prepared for war. Russia announced mobilization, prompting a German ultimatum to halt this process, as well as another to France demanding neutrality in the coming conflict. Historian James Joel writes, "Once the Russians had mobilized, the military machine took over from the diplomats. Germany declared war on Russia and France, and Britain declared war on Germany, effectively beginning World War I." Following the eruption of war, the first significant military event occurred at the First Battle of the Marne on September 5, 1914, stopping the German offensive against France and ending the Schäfflin Plan. Significant trench warfare was first exhibited in the First Battle of Ypres in Belgium. The United States began its involvement with the arrest of German officer Werner Horn, a saboteur attempting a railway bombing in the U.S. on February 7, 1914. Germany began its aggressive tendencies against the United States with the declaration of unrestricted submarine warfare against merchant ships on July 4, 1915. The first deployment of gas and chemical weapons was by Germany in the Second Battle of Ypres, affecting 10,000 Allied troops and killing half of them. A German U-boat torpedoed the liner Lusitania on May 7, 1915, further encouraging U.S. involvement. Following widespread outrage, it was promised that this policy would end. Germany began its attack in the Battle of Verdun on February 26, 1918, using heavy artillery bombardment, naming it Gerecht, place of execution. France holds for the following year with the battle cry, "They shall not pass." In an effort to pull German troops away from Verdun, the Allies launched the Battle of the Somme with heavy British tank warfare on July 1, 1916. Following Wilson's re-election, Germany resumed its tendencies of unrestricted U-boat warfare. The U.S. severed diplomatic ties with Germany and was then notified of the Zimmermann Telegram, in which Germany encouraged alliance with Mexico against the United States. Following U.S. entry into the war in April 1917, successive military victories turned the tide in the Allies' favor. Wilson outlined his 14 points on January 8, 1918. Following revolution, Soviet Russia signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk on March 3, 1918, ceding lands and economic holdings to Germany in order to leave the war. On September 28, 1918, the Argonne Offensive began as the most influential battle in the war. Germany came to sign an armistice, and Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated his throne on November 28, 1918. Austria then separated from Hungary, and Emperor Karl abdicated. Prior, the Russian Tsar and his family were murdered by the Bolshevik revolutionaries. In peace negotiations, the League of Nations received inadequate support, and allies primarily focused on the prevention of Germany to start another war. On June 28, 1919, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, with significant measures placed against the Central Powers. Following the war, the terms of economic instability had already begun falling into place. By abandoning the gold standard during the war in order to build up militaries, many countries began switching back to the gold standard, with damage to economic balance. The war itself caused great infrastructural damage to every participating country's economy, slowing industrial production immensely. Post-war euphoria led to widespread over-speculation of stock values, causing the stock market crash of 1929. Due to the jeopardization of the U.S. economy, the loans European nations had come to rely on were inaccessible, causing global breakdown of economic systems. While many Americans and Europeans believed a free market economy would eventually recover, socialist systems, such as Soviet Russia and later Nazi Germany, retained their balance in this period, despite their long-term ineffectivity. As the global economic depression took hold throughout the 1930s, weak nations and governments fell to rising dictatorial nationalists, including Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini. With the zealous ambitions of these new totalitarian regimes, tension once again built until the declaration of the Second World War in 1939. World War II had begun, and would see some of the greatest atrocities and losses in human history. If it is this we look to in attempting to prevent history's mistakes, perhaps through a greater understanding of the First World War, may we know how to prevent a crisis of this magnitude in the years to come.